There was a man who lived quietly in the shadow of his own potential. Every day he walked through the world wearing a mask, one of politeness, predictability, and silent frustration. To the outside world, he looked stable, maybe even successful. But inside, he was at war, because deep down, he knew he wasn't living the life he was meant to live. He was drifting, waking up tired, drowning in distraction, numb to purpose. Every morning, he'd stare in the mirror at a version of himself he didn't respect. The man looking back was soft, afraid to fail, afraid to speak up, afraid to risk. He wanted more, he dreamed of more, but his actions belonged to someone who had already given up. One morning, that man broke, not loudly, not with tears, but with a quiet decision, a death sentence, not for his body, but for his lesser self, the version of him that made excuses, that hit snooze, that procrastinated, that settled. He looked into his own eyes and whispered, "You've had your time. Now you die." That was the moment everything changed. Not because the world changed, but because he changed. And that's when the story really began. He started waking up before the sun, not because it was trendy, but because he was on a mission. No more comfort, no more compromise. He trained his body with intensity, not to impress anyone, but to harden his mind. Every drop of sweat was a strike against weakness. He read, not for entertainment, but for warfare, strategy, psychology, power. He studied the greats: Hill, Carnegie, Emerson, Marcus Aurelius. He fed his mind with purpose until it became bulletproof. His mornings were no longer rituals. They were battles. Battles where the old version of himself still tried to claw its way back. But each time it showed up, he beat it down with discipline. Napoleon Hill once said, "Every adversity, every failure, every heart-hatch carries with the seed of an equal or greater benefit." And this man began to see it. His pain, his insecurity, his past failures, they were not curses. They were fuel. Every time life had knocked him down, it had handed him a hammer. And now, brick by brick, he was building something new, something terrifying, something unstoppable. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the man began to walk differently. Not with arrogance, but with certainty. He no longer looked for permission. He no longer asked the world to validate him, because something inside him had shifted. He wasn't living by emotion anymore. He was living by decision. Every morning he buried the weaker version of himself a little deeper. That voice, the one that used to whisper, "It's too hard. You're not enough. Maybe tomorrow," was now muffled beneath the weight of discipline. That version had no place here, because the man he was becoming didn't negotiate with mediocrity. There were still days when the old self showed up, days when the bed felt too warm, when doubt returned like a fog. But he had prepared for this. He welcomed it like a soldier welcomes the enemy, ready, alert, smiling, because he knew the weak version of himself would always try to return. It would disguise itself as comfort, as logic, as fear. But he no longer feared it. He hunted it. And every time it appeared, he smiled and said, "I've been waiting for you." Then he got to work. He was no longer addicted to the outcome. He was addicted to the process, to the pain, to the growth. He stopped measuring success by results and started measuring it by who he was becoming. And every day he became harder to kill, more disciplined, more dangerous. He started building something bigger than goals. He was building identity. Hill wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." And now this man's mind no longer flirted with doubt. It was married to belief. Every step, every task, every moment was saturated with intention. He started cutting out everything that fed his weakness, the distractions, the cheap dopamine, the people who only knew his old self. He wasn't cruel. He was clear. If it didn't feed his higher purpose, it was gone, because he knew your environment either fuels your future or it buries it. So he designed a life that reflected the man he was becoming, a life that demanded his strength, his fire, his growth. And with each passing day, his circle got smaller, but his vision got sharper. He no longer needed praise. He no longer craved applause. Because when you kill your weak self, you stop chasing the world and start creating it. That's when the real freedom begins. That's when you stop reacting and start commanding. That's when you stop hoping and start knowing. Then came the moment that would test everything. A storm hit, life threw him its worst. A business collapsed. A betrayal shattered his trust. He lost people. He He lost money. He lost certainty, the kind of blow that would crush the man he used to be. But not this man, because this man had already died and been reborn by choice. He didn't panic. He didn't crumble. He smiled, not because it was easy, but because he had prepared for the pain. Napoleon Hill said, "Opportunity often comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat." And this man had trained for war in times of peace. He didn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" He asked, "What is this trying to make of me?" Because the one who's already buried weeks no longer sees adversity as punishment. It's initiation. So he rose. While others ran, he stood still. While others complained, he recalibrated. He did not seek comfort. He sharpened his vision. He did not beg for help. He built new strength. And in that moment, standing in the ruins of what used to be, he saw clearly this was not a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. The fire that came to destroy him became the forge that shaped him. The man who once hid from discomfort was now unrecognizable. A force, not a follower. A creator, not a victim. Because when you kill the weak version of yourself, you stop trying to survive life, and you start dominating it. He remembered Hill's words, "You have absolute control over just one thing, your thoughts." And now his mind was his kingdom. No outside force could shake him. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He created them. He didn't wait for the world to give him value. He declared his worth with action. The mission was simple now. Wake up. Hunt the weaker self. Kill it again. Every moment. With every word spoken, every rep lifted, every boundary enforced, he started mentoring others. Not with speeches, but with presence. They could feel it in him. The fire, the intensity, the peace of a man who had killed everything that once held him back. Not just once, but every day. Because that weak version never truly vanishes. It hides. But so does the warrior. The one who wakes up with purpose. The one who remembers the old life, not with regret, but with gratitude. Because that pain became the raw material for power. He had not just improved. He had transformed. And transformation is not change. It's death and rebirth, the end of the weaker you, the rise of the real you. And now it's your turn. You, listening to this right now. You've heard that voice too. You've seen that weaker version in the mirror. The one who settles. The one who hides. But the one who waits. But deep down, you know that version of you has to die, not later, not someday. Now, that death is the beginning. The old story ends when you decide it's over. And the new one begins with a single word, enough. Enough of the lies, enough of the delays, enough of playing small, enough of forgetting who you really are. This is not just a story. This is your wake-up call. You've got work to do, and the man or woman you could become. They're waiting on the other side of your excuses. So kill that weaker version. Every morning, every breath, bury it beneath discipline. Burn it in the fire of your vision. And when you rise with power. Rise with purpose. Rise like the storm was never meant to destroy you, but to reveal you. You want freedom. Kill weakness. You want greatness. Kill distraction. You want a life that leaves a mark. Kill everything that no longer serves who you are becoming. Because the dream you've buried for so long, it's not dead. It's just waiting on you to rise from the ashes of your own lesser self and finally become who you were born to be.